and one thing, and you can push the green, the button in the center if you need the microphone. Should turn it green. This is.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. I call the meeting to order on July 28th, 2026. This is the meeting of the Board of Adjustments, and we're starting the meeting at 5:30 p.m. Dolores, do you want to do a roll call of the members of the Board of Adjustments? Or do we need to do the swearing in first?
No, we'll do roll call, then we'll swear them in and then the official.
Perfect.
All right, Chair Eister,
Present?
Commissioner Melito.
Present.
Commissioner Hurd. Commissioner Huber,
Present.
Commissioner Van Leeuwen,
Present.
Dolores, are there any amendments to the agenda?
none that I'm aware of.
I ask for a member of the Board of Adjustments who has reviewed the minutes from our last meeting to make a motion to approve.
I reviewed the minutes and I make a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of approval of the minutes from our last meeting of the Board of Adjustments, say aye.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay. All right, at this point, we're going to swear in some new members of the Board of Adjustments.
Nate, if you want to stand and raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I left yours up there. I, Nathaniel Morin,
I, Nathaniel Moore,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
and the Town of Lyons Municipal Code,
Town of Lyons,
and faithfully perform the duties of the Office of Board of Adjustments of the Town of Lyons,
faithfully perform the duties of the Board of Adjustments of the Town of Lyons,
upon which I am about to enter.
on which I am about to enter.
Very good. Congratulations. Thank you. Ms. Holly? I, Holly Rogan,
I, Holly Rogan,
do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
Do swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
the Constitution of the State of Colorado,
and the Town of Lyons Municipal Code,
and the Town of Lyons Municipal Code,
and faithfully perform the duties of the Office of Board of Adjustments of the Town of Lyons,
and faithfully perform the duties of the Office of Board of Adjustments of the Town of Lyons,
upon which I am about to enter.
upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations. Thank you.
thank you. Okay. We're gonna move into the consent agenda. Move to the public hearing. This application on the agenda is for a variance application submitted by Patrick and Vanessa Hoffman for a corner side yard variance for the property located at 441 Stickley Street in Lyons, Colorado. This item is scheduled for a public hearing for the board. The purpose of the Board of Adjustments is to consider variance requests and appeals of administrative decisions. In considering an application before it, the board must hold a public hearing and will follow certain procedures in order to conduct a hearing that was fair, impartial, and orderly. As a general rule, each individual speaker will be given 5 minutes to speak. The applicant's primary representative will have up to 10 minutes to present the application. Subsequent speakers representing the applicant may speak for up to 5 minutes per speaker. The board may ask questions of the applicant, staff, or any speaker at any time. If there are members of the public present to comment on the application, board will generally allow each speaker up to 5 minutes to address the board. The board discourages repetitive testimony. A concurring vote of 4 members of the board is necessary to reverse or modify any decision or determination of the town or to approve a variance application. I'll now open the public hearing on the variance request for 441 Stickney. We will first hear from Lisa Ritchie, town planner, who will give an overview of the case.
Thank you, Board of Adjustments. Hi, everybody. Lisa Ritchie, Town Planner. I mean, this is not deja vu. You did hear an application last fall. on this same property. However, this is a new and standalone separate request that should be considered kind of in light of its own facts of the case and criteria. So I just want to be clear that this was your last property that you had met on. But we're gonna go through this from the beginning. So the property shown in an aerial image on the screen is within the R1 zone district. Property contains an existing single unit residential structure that was built in approximately 1903. The applicants acquired the property in 2024. And as I just mentioned, a similar variance was approved in 2025 for construction of the accessory dwelling unit. And that variance was also to allow a 10-foot corner side yard setback. That ADU is in place and constructed. And with exception of the corner side setback, is the proof the variance meets applicable town code. So tonight we are here to consider basically the same request for relief from the 20-foot corner side yard setback to allow a 10-foot corner side yard setback for the new single unit house. So the applicant will have a separate permit to demo the existing historic structure. As you can see on the image in front of you, this is a survey that the applicant submitted prior to construction of the ADU and the proposed single unit home, but there are a number of encroachments that the applicant surveyor identified on their property from the neighbors. And so that is just a partial basis for the request. And so I just kind of wanted to highlight that for you here on the screen. You can see the kind of the image around, the property line here. That there is a fence in this blue line here that is within the applicant's property, as well as a portion of the neighbor's garage encroaching over the property line. And as we talked about last time, it's not really the town's role to determine property line location and structure locations. We rely on professionally licensed surveyors to do that work. And provided it's a stamped survey, it's really a private property dispute with the neighboring property owner and to how they wish to resolve this issue, if at all. It's not necessarily the town's role to say, well, actually, we think the property line is here, here, or here. So we lean on the survey. So just wanted to note that from town staff, we're not making a decision whether or not this survey is accurate or not. This is just what was submitted and we have no reason to believe it's not accurate. Also shown on this slide for you are the R1 zone district standards that apply to this lot and the proposed dimensions on the application. So the R1 zone district requires a 20-foot front setback. A new house is proposed to meet the 25-foot front setback. Interior side, which is the west side, or excuse me, the east side abutting the neighbor's property, the code allows a 5-foot side setback. They're proposing approximately 9.5 feet to pull it further away from the neighbor's property line. Corner side setback, our code requires 20 feet on a lot if it's a corner lot. They are proposing a little bit over 10 feet here. That is a similar request to the ADU that was approved with the variance in 2025 and is now constructed. And it's also approximately where the existing structure is today. So it's hard to read on this survey, but the existing home on the lot today is approximately 10'7", the 10'7" corner side setback. So the variance request that they're asking for would closely match what exists there today. Just want to note that if you're familiar with the property. Rear setbacks not really coming into play. They're compliant. The code requires 20 feet. They're at approximately 64 feet. And again, the maximum height allowed in our zone district is 30 feet. The applicant application will meet that height limit. We do have some clarifying questions on the drawings just to confirm that they will meet that height, but we believe they would, with some clarifications on their drawings, they'll get there. Just want to note for the record that our zoning code, other communities require maybe like have a maximum lot coverage percentage or a maximum what we call floor area ratio or bulk plane standards or other types of development standards that can otherwise limit the overall size of structures that could be located on a property. Lyons zoning code in the R1 zone district does not have these tools. So These are the applicable standards, and with the exception of the corner side yard setback, the application meets the R1 zone district. So I just want to just kind of state that for the record in case that comes up. Happy to answer any clarifying questions on that as well. It's hard to see on this screen, the full size set was included in the packet, but again, as we discussed, the proposal would allow for a 10-foot corner side setback where 20 feet is required, roughly in line with the existing single unit structure that is proposed to be demolished. We're gonna go through the criteria of approval, but I want to note at this point in time that staff is proposing a condition of approval that would reduce the proposed width of the new home to what would be allowed if the variance were not approved. So, the proposed home is approximately 29 feet. The lot is 50 feet wide. The setback limitations that exist today with 5 feet on one side, 20 feet on the other, result in a 25-foot wide building envelope. The application proposes a home that's 29 feet wide. So staff is proposing a condition of approval that would reduce the width of the house to no wider than what the zoning code would otherwise allow, but we're supportive of the side setback variance to shift the house further west. So that's staff's essentially position on that, but we'll walk through the criteria. But I just, as you're thinking about this variance and the criteria, I just want to be really clear that staff is proposing a condition of approval. I'm gonna let the applicants address it, but they're not objecting to that condition of approval. And if the variance is approved, would redesign the home to be reduced. So essentially, the width of the home wouldn't be wider. The variance doesn't allow a wider home than what the zoning code would otherwise allow. It's just allowing the shift of the home. So again, walking through the criteria of approval, specific to the question at hand, which is the reduction of the corner side setback, that there are unique physical circumstances or conditions such as irregularity, narrowness, or shallowness of the lot, or exceptional topographic or other physical condition peculiar to the affected property. Staff finds that the lot itself doesn't have a unique situation. It's a typical 50-foot wide lot in our original neighborhood. However, with the encroachments from the neighbor, that is a unique condition that I think warrants consideration for relief from the corner setback to give additional space due to those encroachments. So we find that this criterion is met. And again, because of this unique physical circumstance, the property cannot reasonably developed or used in compliance with the provision of this chapter. Again, with the encroachments, we find that pulling that home away is a reasonable accommodation for development. Again, that due to such physical circumstances or conditions, strict application of this chapter would create a demonstrated hardship. Again, there is some dispute between the neighbors as to where the property line is and where these encroachments actually lie in regards to the property line. So part of the rationale for the request is just to not aggravate that situation and keep the new structure further away. Demonstrated hardship is not self-imposed. Again, as I mentioned, the applicant purchased the property in 2024. These are, historic properties, and this condition has been in place much longer than the applicant has owned the property. And again, that the variance if granted will not adversely affect development of the adjacent property or neighborhood. It's staff's opinion that pulling the home further away will not adversely affect development. The town engineer has been out to the site. We're not concerned about vehicle site limitations, site triangles, impact on the right of way and safety with traffic in the area. So we're not concerned that the corner side setback reduction will create a traffic or safety hazard. And again, moving on through the criteria, that the variance if granted will not change the character of the zoning district in which the property is located. So again, staff is leaning on the condition of approval for this criteria because through reducing the width of the house, the R1 zone district allows a 25 feet house on this spot, right? So through the condition of approval that would reduce it to 25 feet, in staff's opinion, that's in keeping with the character of what would be allowed in the R1 zone district, and as well as the existing location of the structure that's there today. And the variance, if granted, is in keeping with the intent of this code, again, leaning on the condition of approval here, which allows a 25-foot wide home on the lot. That's in keeping with the intent of the code. And the variance, if granted, will not adversely affect the health, safety, or welfare of the citizens of the town. And again, staff doesn't have any concerns related to safety, health, safety, or welfare through just the application of the corner side setback variance. So again, with that, we're recommending approval with the condition that the structure width be no wider than it's 25 feet, 0.16 based on the survey, given that the lot is 50.16 wide. And again, the applicant is agreed that if the variance is granted, they will notify the home to meet that criteria for that condition. So that's all I have for you tonight. Happy to answer any questions, or if you want to get applicants next, however you'd like to go.
Thank you, Lisa.
Yeah.
Does anyone on the board have questions of town staff at this time? Thank you for that presentation. It's nice to be in the room with you again.
Thank you, you too.
In the code, is there a definition of demonstrated hardship?
I don't believe so, but I'm gonna look at the town attorney and have him check that for me.
I'll have to check the code. Usually it's not. Usually it's kind of a common law, which means it's developed over time in the case law. But I'll check the code if we have anything more specific. But I mean, I think typically the way we're supposed to look at it as demonstrated hardship is not something that's self-imposed. It's something that is a feature that is outside of the applicant's control, usually physical. But I'll check on the code as whether there's a specific definition or not.
Thank you.
Any other questions for you?
Tanya, I just have a question. Thanks for your presentation.
Yep.
How wide is the existing structure? Approximately. Do
Do
we
you
know
know
that?
offhand? I can look on the survey otherwise. It appears it's here on the screen, but I
I
might,
think it was hard to read that.
yeah.
It's 856 square feet.
Let me stop
Excuse
sharing
me.
and I'll,
Excuse me, I'm just gonna.
yeah, let me.
We'll just,
Oh,
at this juncture, I'm just gonna ask only for comments from the board or town staff, and we'll definitely be an opportunity for the public to communicate with the board at a later date. So, but if you don't know.
No, I'm pulling it up
Lisa,
here.
okay.
1 minute and I can pull it up. You bet.
Okay, you have a good question.
Sure.
Okay, super. So the question so the new bit of information, from what I've read, is the reduction in the size from 29 feet to 25. So that's, I think, new. I don't think we all had that information.
It was in the cover, it was in the staff report.
The reduction down from 29 feet.
The plans are not, yeah, so the plans do not show
Oh,
that,
okay.
but staff's condition of approval is in there.
And so I was curious how wide the existing structure is.
Yeah, I gotta do a
Since
little
it
math.
sounds Like the existing structure already sits 10 feet, so basically not obeying the current rules and regulations. So anyway, it'd be good to know that.
Yeah, so let me just check right here. So the front kind of primary portion of the structure, which again, I can pull that back up, looks to be about 24.5 feet wide. So let me share my screen again. And I can show you what I'm looking at. And Vanessa or Patrick, if you have.
Okay, so we'll hear from Vanessa and
Okay.
Patrick in a few
Okay,
minutes.
you bet. So let me zoom in here and show you the math that I just did. So as you can see, the lot is 50.16 feet wide. So I just subtracted 50.16, I subtracted 11.8. On this side, it's 10.2 on this southern side. And then 13.6 on this lot, on this side of the lot, and I get 24.5 feet wide. So the existing home is,
So the proposed build footprint is approximately the same as the existing structure.
it is deeper,
Understood, but just
but
from.
the width will be approximately the same.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
And it looks like Attorney Dittman had yes.
Yeah, I was gonna follow up on the code and what it says about undue hardship. It doesn't have a specific definition of what undue hardship is, but it does say what it isn't, which I think you already had up before, which is something that's not just simply an inconvenience, but goes beyond that. Something that's not the same as, what similar situated individuals, experience. and that convenience, profit, and caprice shall not constitute undue hardship. So it shows up a handful of different places in the code. In the variance criteria 161470, it shows up and says what it specifically isn't. We don't have a concise definition of what it is, and I think that's somewhat intentional because it is really, in the eyes of the beholder, it is somewhat subjective. So just wanted to follow up on that question.
Thank you. Any other-
Yeah, I have a question. What's the reasoning behind the condition? They proposed a 4 foot longer or wider house and the staff put a condition on there?
Yeah,
Pretty
so-
much the same, is there?
Yeah, just so that the width of the house wouldn't exceed what otherwise would be allowed. Recognizing that, you know, that the character of the neighborhood would allow, or the character of the R1 zone district would allow, a house that's 25 feet wide if they weren't here for you. Also recognizing that we do have concerns from neighbors regarding the overall size of the structure. Staff felt like that was a reasonable condition related to, you know, some of the expressed concerns around character. And so that was staff's view of the criteria related to the request. Yep.
Any other questions for town staff at this time? We can also ask questions later. All right. Now I'll ask the applicant to present their application. And when you get to the podium, if you could just state your name and your address for the record, that would be great.
Patrick Hoffman, 441 Stupney Street. It's my wife Vanessa, my son Thaddeus. Lisa did a great presentation. I don't have a lot to add to it, just a little bit of context and clarification. The 29 feet, we apologize. We have been so busy with construction, moving, new schools, and submission deadlines. We just lost sight of what was in front of us. We always meant that other structure to be 25 feet wide. The existing structure is approximately 25 feet. The ADU is 25 feet. The plan for the primary residence was 25 feet. So I apologize for the confusion the 29 has caused. We are fully in support of what staff pointed out, and thank you for just reminding us of where we should have been to begin with. So there's that. Then I have some AI renderings I can share if it's helpful, but I just also wanted to clarify, we're not trying to max out the height. I think we're actually gonna come in below that 30 feet. We're not trying to max out the amount of land we're covering on the property. We're actually trying to, we wanted to keep the structure separate so that there's some room between. It just breaks it up visually, allows room for more landscaping. And I've had a chance to look at some of the public comments, and I just want to preempt, I saw trees mentioned in a couple of those. No one is more disappointed than me that every tree on our lot is dead, dying, or damaged. I was really excited about the prospect of mature trees. We've actually planted a new tree. We plan to plant several more once construction's done, but what we didn't want to do was put in a bunch of pretty landscaping, have backhoes tear it up, and then we're just making the best. So we're cognizant of that. I want it to be as green as possible, and you know, we'll hit there. Yeah, and then just finally, just, you know, kind of like why we're here, why we're doing this. You know, some of you I know, you know, at Deja Vu, we were here before. When we bought this lot, we knew it was a corner lot. We knew what the setbacks are, and so we always had the 25 feet width in mind. What we didn't know until we got it in the process was the encroachments. And that kind of threw a wrench in things, but as anyone who's developed anything or even built a shed in your backyard knows, there's always curveballs and there's always compromises. So what we were trying to do with the ADU and what we're trying to do here is to say, hey, you know, we're not looking to build wider, we're not looking to outbuild anything. We just want to shift it over. And I think we're actually going to be a foot or so further from the street than the current structure is. So I know it's not a lot, but we're actually a little bit more, you know, setback and, you know, we think that's just the best way forward that, you know, satisfies, concerns that still allows us to move forward with development. So thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions of the applicant at this time? Okay, I have one question, and just a clarification. it sounds like, and I've heard this a number of times, I just want to make sure I'm understanding, is that the new structure will not be built in exactly the footprints on the sides as the old structure, but very close.
Yeah, I mean, as you saw in that
That
diagram.
will be, I'm sorry, a little closer on the, no, it'll be almost exactly, is that right?
I think we're gonna be a little closer to the ADU than the current.
In the
structure.
back.
In the
Sure.
back.
But on the sides.
On the sides will be the same on Fifth and will actually be a little bit narrower on the east side.
On
As
the
you
east
saw there, there's that. I think it said it was built in 1903 and it was added on to many times. So there's like an addition
Yeah.
on the east side will actually be narrower.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, terrific, thank you. Okay, I will now open the public comment portion of the hearing to allow members of the public an opportunity to address the board. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes per person and please avoid repetitive testimony. Thank you, Satan. Anyone here? I see a number
Before
of
you
folks.
start
in the-
that, do you mind if I add something else?
Oh,
Or
I'm
should
sorry.
That part of the, I can do it as part of the public comments. Either way.
No, you're part of the applicant. You've got a little more time. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I thought
No,
you
you're
guys
good.
were done.
I was just gonna clarify a few things. So the structure
If
is
you could please come to the mic and say your name and address.
Vanessa Hoffman, 441 Stickney.
Thank you.
Okay, so the 24.8 is the width of the structure. There is also a 4-foot, like width porch. And that is 6'7" or something approximately off of Fifth Avenue. So the encroachment that exists currently in the structure is far less. Just FYI. And then so if you're determining like the actual width of the existing structure, there's another 5'5" of the bathroom addition on the side. So our current structure is actually much wider than 25.
And it's widest point, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I was just gonna point out that.
Vanessa, would you mind checking to see if your mic is?
I'll check this one.
Okay.
Just because we might have some folks online.
Does it have a battery?
It's not working.
I can hear him pretty well, FYI, so.
Okay,
Okay.
I guess we're not worried about it.
I was just gonna clarify something, that the encroachments were noted after we purchased the property. Just that way, on that
Okay.
one, so I wasn't sure if that was noted. Yep, I think that was it. So thank you for your time.
Okay, any questions?
Just a quick question, you mentioned encroachment.
Yeah.
So when we heard the ADU, proposal, the encroachment was the neighbor's garage, right? From the house perspective, which is further up on the property, is the encroachment the fence per se, or is it a structure?
So there's several encroachments on the property itself. You've got the fence, also the alley encroaches on the property.
In the back?
Yeah. So it's.
Right, but I guess I'm
The fence,
specifically talking about the new proposed house structure.
That part.
The encroachment you're referring to is the fence. Okay,
But there-
is that your fence or is that the neighbor's fence?
So the property line is on the other side of that fence. And so. Yeah, so
Is it your, whose fence is it, or if
We rebuilt.
you rebuilt it, okay, so you rebuilt the fence on your property. So it isn't really a hard time.
Well, we rebuilt, then the existing fence was destroyed in recent windstorm. So, and as I'm sure you know, there's a code that came into effect. You couldn't build wood fences after July 1st. So we put a new wood fence up. The property line is still in dispute. So I mean, in our ideal world, we'd move it over. Now, we're not naive. I mean, there's structure there and, but the thought was, let's just get the fence up and then when the property, if the property line moves, the fence can move. The property line's probably not gonna move based on my understanding. But I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV. I don't claim to know how that's gonna be solved. So this was, sorry, am I making sense or am I further confusing?
I think that's,
Okay.
I mean, I'm just trying to understand the encroachment. How
Yeah.
it pertains to the new proposed structure. versus a previous meeting in which the encroachment was a pretty significant encroachment, moves to the garage. So you answered my question.
Yeah, I just have a quick follow-up. I think you answered it, but there has been no, last time you were here, you said it was being disputed, right? So there has been no resolution, and I know it's not the town.
Yeah.
We're here, but
Yeah.
there's been no
No,
issue to point, where's the?
There, no,
process?
so we called the title, we had title insurance, so they. I'm not sure it's in their best interest to settle quickly, and we've had to provide a lot of encouragement to move them along. They have sent their surveyor recently, I believe, and so we're going through the process. We've never done this before, so I apologize if we're going too slowly with it, but we're trying to do it correctly and not rush things, but that's where we're at.
Okay. Other rush to finish the fence, I should say, was this guy. You guys have a lot of animals up here and he would probably go pet them. You know, and he would also, if you've seen him on Fifth Avenue, he will walk into the street and try to stop cars. So we were concerned about his safety, primarily, and we knew the other fence wasn't gonna work for us. Shambles. So. Okay.
Thanks. Okay, now we really need it. Now we'll begin the public comment portion of the hearing to allow members of the public an opportunity to address the board. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes per person and voice recorded testimony. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak? Okay, come on up and say your name and where you live.
I am Susie Anderson. I live at 434 Spitman Street, so kind of catty corner.
Hold that microphone. Just a little closer.
There. Just for you, why it's getting too fat.
Okay.
Alright.
Thank you.
So
Maybe we turn it off. Yeah, I can hear okay online. We'll turn it off instead. We'll just speak up.
and I do have a question of the board. So before you make a decision, do you read all the letters that you receive? And
You know, this is your time to talk to us,
I know, but
and not our time to talk to you. You just give your comments and that would be great.
I
Thank you.
apologize. I
That's
haven't
okay.
done this before.
No
So I
worries.
was just kind of curious how it all worked.
Thank you. Yeah, it's your time to talk to us.
I am one of the members that wrote a letter, respectfully opposing the requested variance. The portion of the, what they call the, problem with the garage on their property was with the ADU. It has nothing to do with the house. And I believe everything has been met as far as the property lines that are in question. So for the house itself, I don't see where that really is necessary. Number one. So the part of the fence that was there before was a different fence and it was demolished with the building of the ADU. So they did put a whole new fence along that line. I don't know if they put it closer to theirs or closer to the other, but that fence was done. So I also have a concern that with the front and the back of the house, and I don't know, forgive me again, I haven't done this before. They're building decks on the second story in both the front and the back of the house. And I think that will really affect sight lines when people are coming around the corner. And we have a lot of school children that walk to school. And so I'm not sure how that affects sight lines, but it does. And also they are going from a 1-story building to a 2-story building, which also does affect sight lines and the neighborhood. And that's a concern to me. So, you know, the fact that everything is pretty high is gonna diminish the privacy of our homes. It's gonna increase potential drainage and runoff issues and obstruct the views. So those are some of the concerns that I also have. And as far as the applicant, I believe that their hardship was self-imposed. I believe that they knew, and there is some, the letter from Alicia Johnson kind of points out, that they knew of the property lines before they purchased the house. And they purchased it, and they're trying to put two very, very large buildings in a very small lot. So it's not really, you know, I feel it's self. Because they could put in structures that are smaller. You know, the other thing is they built the ADU first, and it's huge. And so now they want a variance because they want to build a really big building in the front of it as well. And, you know, the property is small. So, I just think that it's not the right thing to do.
Thank you so much for your comments. I just wanted to say I really appreciate all of the public comment, and I know it's hard to stand up in front of this for some folks like me. So thank you. Anyone else who has public comment?
I'm Patricia Applefeller. I'm at 427 Stickney. And I wrote a letter, I won't repeat it. Just wanted to add something about the height of the buildings. You know, the one is already built and I was shocked at how high it was and towering over the neighborhood. And I don't know if this board has anything to do with that, but it's something to think about in the future, that it really affects the neighborhood drastically. So if this house can be more reasonable, that would be great. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you. Anyone else who has public comment? Okay. Thank you to everyone who addressed the board, and for those who sent in letters. That's helpful for us. Okay. I'll now ask the applicant if they wish to present any rebuttal, any comments raised by the staff of the public.
Nothing so.
Okay, sure. Okay, I will now close the public comment portion of the public hearing in order for the board to deliberate. Please keep in mind that during deliberation, no further input from staff, the public, or the applicant is permitted unless the board requests clarification on specific issues. Is there a board member who'd like to make a motion at this time? We need to start with one and then we can discuss.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditions outlined by staff.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
In FYI, you can make a motion in a second and then later not support it, just for the purpose of putting it on the table to discuss.
Okay, thank you. Now we can move to the discussion piece. I just wanted to start with, we got some new folks on the board today. The way we typically run this, and I'm not saying we have to do it that way, it's just the way we typically done it, is we try to focus on the criteria in the statute as our guidance for the discussion, so that it can give us a real structure rather than just a generalized discussion about how we feel, which is okay to say how you feel, but we would prefer that you do it in the context of the criteria that are required. And so with that in mind, what I'd like to do is just kind of run through it with everyone. And as a reminder, again, I usually print the statute and bring it with me, but it is available and was utilized by town staff, but there are two pieces to it. The first is that we're not allowed to print it if it meets any of 6 criteria. So first we just say, is there anything that would just prevent us off the bat from granting the variance? So the first one is permits a land use not allowed in the zoning district. I think it does permit a land use, so that one's okay, unless anyone has, feel free to jump in. Is in the public right of way or on public property. Not an issue here. Alters any definition of this chapter. Okay. Is other than the minimum variance that will afford relief with the least modification possible to the requirements of that chapter. So it's kind of a double negative. But it's saying, you know, if this is more than the minimum, then that prevents us from doing the variance. And so we can put a pin in that if we want to come back to it, but maybe we'll just put a mark next to it. And then the other is based on physical conditions or circumstances of the property, so general or recurring throughout the district as to reasonably make practicable the formulation of a general regulation to be adopted as amendment to this chapter. I've always taken that to be, you know, if all of the houses in the area have the same issue, then it's not a unique issue. So, you know, I see maybe that's a fine discussion, so we can come back to that. And the last is based exclusively on findings of personal or financial hardship. Convenience, profit, or caprice will not constitute undue hardship. So if we think the only reason we're being asked for this variance is personal or financial hardship, then we cannot grant the variance. But I just put that emphasis on exclusive. If there are other reasons why they want the variance besides that, then we meet that hurdle. Okay, do we want to talk about the last three now? Because they are threshold criteria. Does anyone have? You want to go with them?
Well, I just maybe a little bit of background for some of the new members. And I don't want to get too in the weeds here.
Yeah, go for it.
But the discussions around the ADU and the particular situation of that, granting that variance was kind of based on, you know, town promoting the build out of ADUs. And also because of the garage situation, we really needed to grant that extra space to the left because they wouldn't be able to build a fire safe ADU, they couldn't put windows in it. So that decision was unique. And we also know that many of the cases that we've heard, the town regulations that have been put in place in some of the newer neighborhoods, right, with 20-foot variances are difficult to apply into the old part of town, right? And this house is a great example of that. Current footprint is 10 feet from the side. So for us to say, well, we're not gonna grant the variance, that means we're gonna move the new house to 20 feet from the street, which is gonna put it closer to the neighbor's house. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there. This is gonna be ongoing for anyone who wants to remodel, rebuild, whatever. So just throwing that out there, like this is a kind of maybe a precedent case. And yeah, I mean, that's a big issue. So we've also talked about, you know, maybe the town needs to review some regulations. The other thing I just want to state is that it is our role just to hear this particular request. Not our job to determine how big a house is, how tall a house is, color the house is. That is not something we do or ever get involved with. So when you think about the height of a house and, you know, I guess whatever, we keep it in mind, like, okay, if it's gonna be 2 stories, but now it's gonna be 2 stories this way. You know, does that make sense in our deliberation? So I just wanted to throw that out there a little bit for us to consider or talk about.
Thank you, Bill. I'd like to go back to these 3 threshold criteria if we can. And I'd like to hear obviously everyone's thoughts on it, but I'm happy to start with mine. Is other than the minimum variance that will afford relief, the least modification possible to requirements of this chapter. You know, I don't know if this is the minimum, but it feels pretty close to the minimum to me. Because the existing structure is already in the setback. They're only asking for us to shift it slightly further west than the existing structure. They're not really asking for much that's different from the existing situation. And, in my mind, I guess it's a question for staff, is they could build in the existing footprint without the need for a variance.
So
I
the
see.
code requires, they could modify the existing structure, you know, interior, but any changes to the exterior footprint
Still require
would still require variance. So, yeah.
So this goes to my other thought, which is, that we are supposed to look at what is reasonable use. I'm not certain that it's reasonable to expect this home to never be rebuilt. That is my thinking about it.
I would agree with that.
And if we expect that a reasonable use for property owners to rebuild the home on the property, then I think we have to assume that it could be rebuilt in essentially the same space to the west and east.
Just in the spirit of the conversation.
Sure.
So now the uniqueness is that there's gonna be a second story, right, which
It's not our problem.
not a problem, I understand, but from a town's perspective, then, you know, if that goes, it should meet the criteria of 20 feet, and it does move that off of the street, meeting the town's own set criteria of role.
Can you say that again, Bill? I'm not sure.
Well, so, because there's gonna be an additional story, let's just say, or possibly. Then the town in theory would want us to move that property to meet their 20-foot guideline. Or because the height of the structure is new to the character of the neighborhood and stuff like that. But the town didn't make that recommendation.
Yes, we've heard from the town on that issue. It's happening. Bill and anybody else, is anybody else concerned that we don't meet this threshold requirement, that it's the minimum variance? That they want to talk about.
I guess I can back up a little bit.
Sure.
Okay, so the proposed, now the proposed house is 25 feet, or that's the proposed,
Instead of the 20.
the 20. The lot's 50 feet wide, so. Would the house have to be in code, would it have to be moved all the way over next to the property line? 5 feet, so that making.
To the east.
So it would be
We showed the back to the east.
But so there's just 5 feet between that and the property line,
on the east side.
on the east side. So the purpose of the variance is really almost like to center it up on the lot more.
The purpose of the variance is to provide additional space because of the known kind of property dispute and encroachments, just, and, yeah.
I don't know how to ask this, but let's just say that we stick with the town's requirement of 20 feet and the house did shift that direction to the east. How far would it be from, because there's a bit of a misunderstanding as to where the property line is, so in the whoever's best case scenario, would it still have to provide that 5-foot variance from, you know, one person's view of the property line versus the other?
So town staff can only lean on the survey, and so I think it's the location of the fence. Property, you know, the new structure would be located 5 feet from the property line that's shown on their survey. I believe in the front portion of the lot, the fence ranges from maybe 2 feet encroachment to kind of it's a 7-foot encroachment by the time you get to kind of the south end of the lot, so maybe 4 feet. So the house would be, the town wouldn't have the basis to deny a building permit. if they came in for an application that proposes a 25 foot wide house that's 5 feet from that property line.
Which is fast.
The fence, well, the fence is interior to the property line, and I am happy to show that here, so.
Yeah, Lisa, if you can show this design, if you could. I know, but maybe she.
Yeah, so this.
Not that one.
Not this one.
I mean, other folks, but
This
yeah,
one.
can we get that bigger?
Regarding this piece, does this really have to do with that winning survey? Right,
What do you
it's- Is that a reasonable thing to wait for, so that they could shift east instead of west? Same size.
I mean, anything's on the table at this time, yeah, thanks. Can you get the?
Yeah, let me pull up the actual plan set.
Yeah.
But again, I wouldn't have a basis to deny it if it was 5 feet from the property line. If it's building permitting,
Thanks.
provided everything else met code.
Are most of the lots 50 feet wide of this size lot in town?
So you can see. Trying to zoom in, it's delayed on here. So here's the edge of the home. Here's the 5 foot setback.
The
So
dotted line is the
the
setback.
dotted line is the setback. Again, this home is proposed, is shown as 4 feet wider. The condition of approval would narrow it an additional 4 feet.
And it's hard to see, but I think the blue line, there's a diagonal blue line is the fence.
Yeah, so if you look at that, here's if you look at the ISP or the survey of the existing home. This line with the X's is the location of the fence. And to clarify, you built the fence in the location it was, you just put it back where it was. Okay.
I mean, the interesting thing is all the letters, and I read all the letters, if not once or twice. They're all against the approval of this variance. So what that would set precedent of is that everyone's got to now meet the 20-foot rule for. And most houses probably have some sort of scenario, if anyone decided to rebuild or restructure or whatever. And then the existing house is 10 feet. And so it's kind of like challenging now, like the existing structure is already not meeting the code of the town. And then it's just gonna move it closer to the neighbors, so. It's just like an case.
It's in limbo. Which is another, working on a variance and we haven't had it really, I mean, it's surveyed, but there's a dispute, so it's kind of hard to. Yeah. Moving the goalpost.
The lot line.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to your goodies.
Okay. Okay, so, the 3 threshold requirements, which not grant the variance if we don't cross these thresholds. Is it other than the minimum variance that will afford relief with the least modification possible?
So it is, we think, it's kind of minimum, right?
I feel it is.
Yeah.
It is pretty close to the minimum.
Yeah,
Is based on physical conditions or circumstances of the property, so general or recurring throughout the district as to reasonably make practicable the formulation of a general verbiage to be adopted as an amendment to this chapter.
I'm gonna say that's true. I mean, most of the properties have something going on, and this is centered in the property, and it's kind of the same width as with the existing structure, 10 feet.
Yes, it seems like there are physical conditions very unique to this property to make it an issue. Okay, is based exclusively on findings of personal or financial hardship, convenience, profit, or caprice will not constitute undue hardship.
And if this is, if I might, this is something that I really struggle with and I empathize with you. But when I look at what a hardship really is, I'm not sure that this meets that threshold. and to address, some of the comments, some of the public comment, if I might. So the, by right, folks can build up to 30 feet on their property. That's, that is in the town code. There's nothing to prevent people from doing that. If that is a concern, I suggest, you folks can take it up with the Board of Trustees and see if they would like to change that. And I think that,
We just refer our comments to each other.
I'm so sorry.
Not to the public.
oh, thank you, then I'll stop, perfect.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you. Yeah. And by 30 feet, you mean height.
I do.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, other folks have questions about the hardship issue that, Holly raised.
I mean, so let's just say we don't grant variance. They're gonna move the house 10 feet this way. They're gonna be 5 feet from the fence, which is 2 feet from the property line. Probably not gonna be really ideal, but I don't think it's better too much hardship. So we'll get the same size house, just a little bit over. So. I don't know if it's self-imposed hardship, if we go with that. Is that reading that the right way?
Well, I just wanted to make sure the question is there a request for a variance? Is there the reason they're requesting variance based on just personal and financial hardship? As opposed to, other findings, such as the encumbrances. So if, I think, Bill, I don't want to put word in your mouth, but it sounds like you might be saying, tear down the fence and figure out the lot line. And just build your house. And other, and the choice not to do that. And to request a variance is based on personal or financial hardship. I mean, you're saying.
You're so eloquent. I think that's what I'm saying. I wasn't saying tear up the fence. I was just thinking like, this seems like the sort of logical thing to do, which is the existing home sits here. 10 feet from, set in the lot. It does get from relief from the east neighbors, gives them an extra 5 feet. So yeah, I'd probably ask for a variance and want to keep it in the same spot.
Yeah.
Now, if I don't get the variance, I'm just gonna move it over, because I still got the room. And I meet the town requirements, so. I moved my house over, and so, but now are there power lines and lines in the ground that are an issue?
There's
Because-
sewer and water on the east side.
But does that, yes.
Prevent them from moving it over, you could ask Lisa.
Lisa, would that prevent them from moving it over 10 feet?
It would complicate the project and have the utilities. I would have to work with our utilities director to understand what would be required and the costs associated and whether or not the town would support that decision to relocate to this. I don't have an answer for that one, Chief, tonight.
Okay, but they are within that.
Yes.
Are they within the 5 feet that is within the open zone, or are they within the 5 feet that the new house would be built on?
Oh,
I'm asking you. Sorry, just forgot that. Okay, doesn't matter.
I mean,
Go ahead,
that
Mike.
hardship, they can't do that, or expense property.
Yeah, the way I would read this is that there's more than just their personal hardship involved or financial hardship. We're not saying it's just, be too expensive to do something different. There is an existing fence encumbrance that separates this property. They did rebuild the fence, but fence was there before, right? So I think we need get over this hump. that we can move on to our next set of criteria. But maybe, yeah,
Did we need the last one?
Still.
I thought we went past it, but we can revisit, which is it so recurring or general? That really this should be just adopted a new regulation by the board rather than us trying to do it on a piecemeal basis. I mean, I struggled with that. But the board has not acted and we're presented with this situation.
I don't think it's that one.
The one about the exclusively,
Talk about that one.
of course,
This, you know, one of them's the structure and whether we should move it east or west, the other is entirely aesthetic. So when I mean, it's a clear definition. So we're talking about aesthetic, which seems to be the forefront of most of this. Now that the state's aesthetic. Do we have, because I don't think so, do we have as a town, it sounds like just your response there. There is no policies set up for aesthetic guidelines for calling this historical.
we're not being asked to say anything about,
This town doesn't have them.
I mean. It's open discussion, I'll sure.
The answer to that is no. We have a historic preservation ordinance. But it's very much carrot based and incentive based. So benefits is incentive based to historically landmark property. But other than that, aside from guidelines for the eastern corridor of the business district, which are still kind of loose, there are no.
I think those things satisfy a lot of his concerns, more so than this particular.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
It's the, yeah, so is that, it sounds like from your response earlier, the board doesn't want to move forward to setting up any of those, or must be opposed as a thing.
The board of trustees.
Yeah.
I really have no idea, but it's just not something we can do today. Yeah.
So I think that's something that the public needs to hear, is that we're not here to decide the aesthetics. It's definitely something the board of trustees can take out. That's your, this part is meant to do.
Yeah, and just need for what it's worth, there is a part of our next criteria, which is an 8-part criteria, I'm still trying to. That says, that the variance if granted will not change the character of the zoning district in which the property is located, but it's the character of the zoning district, not the character of the style of home or estate. Yeah, and so like character of zoning district would be like commercial versus residential or multi-residential or.
It's not.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's move on, because I think it sounds like we've gotten past the first 6. Okay. All right. So now we're in this other part, some of these are similar factors. The first one is, in order to grant it, we have to find that we've satisfied all of the following. Okay. Are there unique physical circumstances or conditions such as the irregularity, narrowness, shallowness of the lot, exceptional topographical or other physical condition that's particular to the property? So in order to grant it, we have to find that there is something unique about the physical condition that warrants the variance.
So it's a reason, and that's the fact that there's an encroachment that is unresolved. It's no longer 50 feet wide. Yeah. So I think the mystery gets to that.
But it's also resolved, like, it will be figured out then, property line, so it's not.
No, we don't know that it's going to be 50 feet, that's true, in the end.
It's not a mountain, right? That's something that will be resolved.
I mean, it's certainly capable of resolution. And we don't know what that resolution will be, and neither are we in charge of it. There are lots of ways to resolve property line disputes. Not all of them were to shift the lot line back towards First Street.
The one uniqueness about the property is that current structure is already breaking the town's code And it's only 10 feet from the street and not from the street. That's unique,
That's true.
but it's not gonna be unique with all the other houses that we hear.
It's all over downtown, yeah, no question. Because of these unique physical circumstances or conditions, the property cannot be reasonably developed or used to accordance with the conditions of this chapter.
I don't,
That's true.
Yeah, because of the unique physical conditions, the property cannot be reasonably developed or used in compliance with the provisions of this chapter. So this, go ahead, Bill.
well, no, I mean, I don't think that's true, right? It could be still developed. You know, it just be moved and more expensive or whatever.
Yeah, it would be hardship. One would say. Because you'd have to resolve the lot line issue, you'd have to move the existing fence. Possibly the utilities.
Yeah. And lose the footprint of the existing house.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just note that the standard is reasonably developed. It doesn't have to be impossible to be.
Ah, I see, okay, that's good clarification.
Due to the unique physical circumstances or conditions, strict application of this chapter would create a demonstrated hardship. So this is Holly, I think you had a thought on this, that you weren't convinced. But I don't want to force you now, but they sounded like maybe.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. I'm not convinced that it can be legally considered a hardship, which is why I asked for the legal definition of hardship. You know, I actually did a little bit of research and looked at the dictionary definition of hardship. And, you know, which is not to say that hardship isn't the same as being inconvenienced or being more expensive. And that I just, you know, this is a legal decision and it's a legal body, and so I just wanna make sure that we're meeting the criteria. And I'm not convinced that this can be considered a true hardship.
Other comments?
So if we don't meet all 8 of those, then we can't grant the variance. So if we don't all agree that this is a hardship, then we would not meet that criteria, is that correct?
We need a vote of 4 to pass, doesn't need to be unanimous. But if we cannot, if as a, if folks are concerned about the question is, in order to vote for the variance, you must meet all the criteria, yes.
So your point on that criteria is that it, in your opinion, doesn't necessarily demonstrate a hardship.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
And I appreciate Holly's comments. I think that the demonstrated hardship here has more to do with, the hardship of having to shift an existing structure to the right. That if they wanted, you know, again, I think it's reasonable to buy a property, and if you're able to rebuild on it, to do so. And, that to make them rebuild it in a different location than the existing structure, to push it so far to the right, where now you're gonna end up with a house that's very close to the house next door. And then all the way down that street would be a hardship, not just on these folks, but on the rest of the neighborhood, in my opinion.
So you're taking the hardship as a hurdle down the street as opposed to just the utilities of those things.
I mean, I guess the question there would be, you know, would it be reasonable for you to assume if you bought a house that you could rebuild the house on the existing structure or the existing foundation? And so I guess that would seem reasonable to me. But if you don't meet code, you could also say, well, you're reasonable for me to put this type of roof on, but the code's changed. They gotta put a certain type of roof on, so now we're saying we're applying, you know, the new town requirements to the whole And it's the beginning of many conversations about that. So,
I don't know if it's our job. So how do we evolve into what he's describing? Setting those new.
Maybe staff who are listening to this conversation can raise it with the board of trustees.
Yeah.
Any more discussion on that point? We don't have to come to consensus, but there's more discussion. People have things they want to share about their thinking. Okay, the demonstrable hardship is not self-imposed is the next factor. Question is, can we grant the variance? If the hardship, we think the hardship is self-imposed. I also did a little work on this myself, and it appears to me that self-imposed in this context was really means something like I decided to divide my lot into 2 lots, and as a result of my decision to do so, now I need a variance. As opposed, so an example in this case would be like, we let them build the ADU, and then as a result of having built the ADU, now they need a variance to do something else. In other words, they created the situation that resulted in the request for variance. That's the way I read that factor. And I don't think that it is self-imposed with that understanding. Nate's giving me a weird look,
So I'm trying to process and one, what has already happened with the, what was the present. And it did, and I'd ask that question. But
yeah, the ADU is not an issue for this.
it's not more self. It didn't,
Didn't create that problem here with that.
yeah, I mean, so like a self-imposed scenario would be you bought the property and you want to build a new house that's 40 feet wide and you're asking for a 10-foot variance to the side. And, but we're just looking at an existing almost like for like placement of size. So,
Except for that.
except for that, right? So it doesn't seem very self-imposed hardship. Again, reasonable that you would expect that you can rebuild on a similar footprint.
Okay, any more discussion on that? That the variance if granted would not adversely affect the proposed development or use of adjacent property or neighborhood. I mean, I don't, if we grant this variance, it's not gonna affect anybody else's ability to build or use their own property. Yeah, the thought there, Bill.
Well, so if we grant this variance, it's not gonna impact a neighbor's ability to use their own property.
Affect the proposed development or use, yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's sort of the precedent of it, right? This is, again, where sort of need like town direction on, you know, if we're gonna be firm on this, then let the rest of the lots go. But it's not really, that's not really the issue here. You know?
Yeah, I actually think granting the variance will make it easier on the neighbor. Okay, the variance if granted will not change the character of the zoning district. Discussion about that. That the variance if granted is in keeping with the intent of this code. I mean, you know, part of the intent of the code is to, you know, have a 20-foot setback, so. But having said that, it's, you know, permitted this grandfathered use. Sometimes we look to a comprehensive plan, that's where the ADU kind of came up in our discussion. Of course, the variance if granted is in keeping with the intent of the code.
the ADU meet the 20-foot.
So that, just for what it's worth, the ADU was, there was an existing shed on the property that was way in the setback. And they had to tear down that shed to build a garage. So actually, the garage was like less of a setback than the existing shed. Yeah, I forgot the question. So we had to grant a setback to allow them to build a garage, but it was less encroaching than the old shed.
So it's something we can tend to.
Yeah, it's on here. I don't know, I think it's like a 10-foot setback we allowed for the shed,
Yeah.
the garage.
10 foot.
So it seemed to be in the number following the city's original code of 28, but.
Yeah. I mean, I'm persuaded by the town planner whose recommendation. You know, think that they're probably better, but to tell us what the intent of the code is than I am, but.
Meaning that town is promoting this recommendation, so that's applicable directly to them.
Okay, and then the last one, if granted, will not adversely affect the health, safety, or welfare of the citizens of the town.
You know, should not be the sightlines.
Yep.
Yep.
Whether or not. It's noted about anything like that. That was also the person who was taking a look at it, but they looking at sightlines.
So the second story decks and balconies will also have to meet the 25-foot front setback. So, and really, when we think about sightlines, typically kind of the best practices is about 30 inches above the ground to about 9 or 10 feet, you know, above that. Beyond that, if you have steep hillsides, which we do, you know, you might look a little taller than that, but you just need to have visibility, you know, kind of from standing height or from a driver's height to be able to see clearly onto around the corners. And so the location of the home, you know, it's a 10-foot setback, but there's additional right of way that's not developed as the street, right? So the actual distance from the property line to Fifth Avenue is, you know, an additional, I believe, about 10 feet. So staff is not concerned. The town engineer did go out there and look at that and is not concerned that a second story will worsen what is not currently a dangerous situation today. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but again, but if we, what if they're building a single story unit, would that change that? That's last statement there, right? It's not for us to really decide that, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
Only insofar as the safety concerns.
And the town has done
That part
sounds like
of
a
it.
study.
yeah, I think it's worthwhile to go through some of the public comments, which kind of address some of these issues. We had a speaker here today who was a little concerned about children, walking to school. That was in one of the letters as well. There was some concern in one of the, letters about fire safety. And the narrowing of the streets, reducing defensible space. There was some comments about, the harm, you know, I think people would interpret the welfare and harm to be loss of a 100-year-old home. Just, I think that was, you know, a feeling that people, I wanted to acknowledge. And that, trying to anybody else pull out any other health, safety, welfare concerns from the comments.
Should be effective. Is there a sidewalk there?
Yes. I do note that we had a couple of letters where Excel came in, of course, from the town report that they didn't have a safety concern. And CDOT didn't have concerns. I mean, I just want to acknowledge that there are other folks who feel differently about it. Yeah.
Might I address the wildfire and wildland urban interface concerns? So any building that's rebuilt on this property will have to meet the current WUI code, which is much stricter than it ever has been before. So any new building will be, more safe when it comes to welfare resiliency. And I think, Planner Rishi has a comment.
Yeah, so they technically have already submitted their building permit, under review. And they submitted prior to the effective date.
Oh.
So this will be reviewed under the 2021.
I mean, Connie, to your point about, so I read all the letters and I guess I'm sensitive to, community, right? And
Sure.
Neighbors are thinking about all this stuff. And so, but I guess, we have nothing to do with what is built. And given that the existing structure sits on almost identical footprint. It's just a weird conundrum because, you wanna really be sensitive to all the neighbors. I don't live there. I understand it. But I'm not sure how much moving it 10 feet this way is gonna stop all those concerns or change that. So I don't know, it's just sort of where I struggle with it, right? And then what's the next one right here? Right, so and then the town supports it. I don't know, anyone want to talk about that? Cause yeah, there are a lot of concerns, there's.
Can I make one statement? I just want to make sure that town staff doesn't ever consider one variance approval a precedent for any other variance approval.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that the town staff isn't viewed that way. Every variance is reviewed against its very specific request, its specific hardship, the specific application of the criteria. So to the degree that's a concern, I think it's relevant to consider, but staff doesn't review it or consider it precedent setting.
I would say legally that's the case as well. I mean, we can only create operational precedents, not legal ones, through these decisions and any sort of land use decision that we make.
I think this is a really good point. It has, I would be open to discussing something that we haven't discussed yet. Which is and just as a reminder, all of us, when we do a variance, it becomes, something that runs with the land. Which means that a future homeowner also can make use of the variance. And, we are presented today with existing plans for a 25-foot structure that's gonna be built. We've allowed them to go 10 foot to the west. With the expectation that they still can only go 25 feet east. And they're not gonna go all the way up to the 5-foot setback. I'm just suggesting that a different circumstance that we would be presented with is one where they wanted to go a variance of 10 feet to the west, and then they decide they're gonna build something that goes all the way up to the 5-foot setback. So in our materials, I think we can say something like you're allowed to have the variance so long as the structure does not exceed 25 feet in width. And I think that's kind of what we're planning, but I just wanted to make sure everyone was okay with that. And that does put, I think some of the public comments were a little bit about, are we gonna have these lot line houses? And this would at least require the structure built on that lot to reflect the traditional 25-foot maximum width for that lot.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So you don't, if you were to grant a variance, you don't want to. So it needs to have a condition.
Yeah.
Set to it.
So it's not only from the west side, but there's also a condition on the east side.
That's right.
Yes.
I do think, just to add in, I do think some additional, I proposed the width maximum, but I think to be clear, it would probably be better to make sure it is, that width is subtracted from whichever side you want. I think the applicant is, clearly said they're willing to reduce the width of the house, so potentially, the home could be 14 feet from, it could be a 14-foot straight side setback instead of a 10-foot straight side setback. Alternatively, it could be, you know, you could maintain that 10-foot on the west side and have, you know, closer to a 15-foot separation from the property line, right? So I think if there's additional desire, if the Board of Adjustment feels that, you know, you would like to really set in, you know, what the allowed setbacks are, the maximum width, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what we'd be saying is what I'm expecting, and I think this is in line with the staff report, was something like you can go into the setback. In the proposed amount, which is like 10 feet, 7
Yeah.
inches or something. Provided, however, that the structure cannot be larger than 25 feet. So we wouldn't address how big the setback is on the east side, we just say, as you know, sort of, you can, because the structure cannot be more than 25 feet wide, you know, that kind of sets for that eastern setback. Which I think preserves again, the kind of idea of centering it under what we think is the existing law.
Can I just ask, so the variance runs with the property, would that rule then also run?
Yes.
So, and to be clear, it runs for the approval of this house. It means that all future owners of this house get to rely on the approval of this variance, but any change that would increase of, you know, if they come in and they say they want, which is why we're here again, right? The approval of the ADU did not set forever that they get a 10-foot setback on this lot. It just meant that that ADU structure gets a 10-foot setback. So if they want to do an addition or change that in the future, they would have to come back.
But if they want to build within the existing footprint, okay.
If it meets zoning,
Yeah.
then they don't have to. But just to be clear, running with the land, yes, they don't have to tear it down in the future, but they can't increase the.
That's helpful.
That's a bridge without another.
Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
any more discussion? I really appreciate everyone's patience in walking through this.
I just said, and did the ADU meet the building requirements?
Yes,
Okay,
it is fast final all final inspections.
as in, the height too?
Just to restate, and to your point though, the 20-foot variance.
Yeah.
And the 5-foot variance.
Yeah.
On a 50-foot lot.
Yeah.
Is really the only thing the town has
Yeah.
to limit the size of a house. So that's an important, that's all we got as far as like limiting
At this time.
at this time. So it's an important attribute of this dialogue.
The intent of the code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Or do folks feel ready? To vote? Right, feeling thoughtful?
Well, I know that is the one item that we were still sort of wondering.
Hardship.
Yeah, if there's more discussion about hardship, we certainly have it.
I don't have anything, but just something about closed.
Well. Yeah, I'm happy if folks have more they want to talk about. Otherwise I think it's up to you to decide what you think. Do you want to share your thoughts?
No, I'm good, I'm just.
Ollie, can I ask you a question? You said you investigated the dump definitions, but not, I don't know that you provided what, out as an actual definition. Because you still
But I
finding
just,
that it didn't meet. Can you,
I'll leave it up to the chair, she thinks that would be a reasonable topic for discussion.
maybe Holly, you can just tell us what you think hardship means based on your general understanding and your common knowledge, rather than
Yeah.
research you might have done outside this hearing.
sure.
So to me, a hardship engenders suffering of some sort. And so that's what I struggle with here, is though it is inconvenient and not ideal and all of these things, I struggle with, is this honestly a hardship? And how strong a tack I should personally take on that question. to this. Because there are good arguments for granting this variance. And at the same time, if I am going to follow the code and conditions, I'm not sure that I can honestly say that I believe that this is a hardship. That's something that I struggle with.
Yeah, and, you know, I really, really value and appreciate that perspective from you. I personally feel that when we're looking at what is a hardship, I think we're, you know, Attorney Dittman mentioned earlier, we have like a negative definition in the code. If it's only convenience, profit, or caprice, it's not good enough. But if we think about hardship in the context of the land code, which is what we're looking at, you know, what would be a hardship for a landowner? A hardship for a landowner might be not being able to build something on land you bought. That reflects your values and use. Because of the unique circumstances. We're not letting people, you know. It was like, you know, caprice is a pretty high standard in my book. Profit is a pretty high standard. Convenience, you know, we're not talking about, in my opinion, hardship can be considered in this context as a hardship to a landowner. That might be. Any discussion, anyone else want to add, Shirley, Jay?
No, I actually agree.
Ernst?
And they're right, they purchased the property. We live a hardship. I think with the condition of the town is presented.
I think the definition that we, kind of in previous cases used is kind of in line with the way this case is, you know, made. It's, you know, I mean, that odd-shaped lots before, we've had to adjudicate on that, and it's, those terms that you outlined, actually, with a race and, profit, are helpful. Thank you, yeah, because that helped clarify what is a hardship versus, because it's kind of a big term.
Okay. Any more discussion? Folks want to engage in on this before we call for a vote? It's getting back to my script, so. Okay. All right. Okay. I think it would be helpful, Holly, you had made the original motion, not as a statement necessarily of your judgment, but just to help us get there. Thank you. And I believe your motion was to approve the variance with the condition recommended by the town, which is that the structure would need to be 25 feet, but no more than 25 feet. Right. So, all right, with that motion on the table, staff, would you please take a roll call of the vote?
You want to use your,
All right, I forgot we have these split
buttons at the bottom.
Yeah, do you want to shift?
And then your thing will light up and will tell us how you're going. So you're going to show, okay.
If it.
Of course. The motion is to approve the variance with the condition that the constructed building would be no more than 25 feet in width.
I need a second.
I had a second.
Seconded by Mr. Molina. So, okay, staff, do you want to take a roll call vote?
Yes, I'll need one.
Oh, everybody, you're not gonna say the names, we just vote.
No, I'll just say it passes and I'll say who votes yes.
All right,
The motion passes unanimously.
Okay. The 441 Stickney Hoffman variance request is approved by a vote of 6 in favor and 0 against. This public hearing is closed at 7:04 p.m. Is there any regular business items to be scheduled?
We have no pending applications that I'm aware of, so we will just let you know when we need to meet again.
Okay. Any reports of board members or staff? I just want to express my appreciation to Nate Holly for joining our board, so now we have a full board. Just terrific. It is not an opportunity for old board members to step down. FYI. Okay, we're going to adjourn the meeting at 7:05 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.